Good morning. Welcome to the program. I'm Mike Leiderman. Who were they? Shopkeepers, teachers, doctors, laborers, merchants, farmers, people from all walks of life, from all sensibilities and from all backgrounds, who lived in Europe during World War II. What do they have in common? Well, very little in most cases, except for a willingness to save Jews and to risk their lives in doing that, to save Jews from the Holocaust. These people are, I think, the most intriguing characters of the war, and even with all the recent emphasis on the Holocaust study, the righteous Gentile is still the least understood. Joining us today to talk about the righteous Gentile is Dr. Mordecai Paldiel. Dr. Paldiel is the director of the Department for the Righteous in Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem. Welcome, Dr. Paldiel.
Welcome, Mike.
To his left, Lisa Derman, who has been with us before. Lisa Derman is a Holocaust survivor now living in the Chicago area who works with the Holocaust Memorial Foundation. Good to have you with us again.
Thank you.
And Nini Blindstrup. Nini Blindstrup lives in Chicago. She was only a teenager when she joined the resistance in her native Holland, the resistance to the Nazi occupation. Very good to have you with us, Dr. Blindstrup.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Dr. Paldiel, as the man who chronicles the righteous in the Holocaust Memorial, Yad Vashem. For those who don't know what it is, briefly, tell us exactly what the purpose of Yad Vashem is.
Yes, Mike. The purpose of Yad Vashem is principally to commemorate a third of the Jewish people, 6 million Jews, who perished in Nazi-occupied Europe, I should say who were murdered by the Nazis on behalf of a very cultivated government people at that time. To commemorate, to honor them, to study the deeds of the perpetrators, to assemble as much archives and documents on that period, and to pass on the legacy of the Holocaust to the next generation, both of Israelis and persons abroad. That law was legislated by the Knesset in 1953. In that law, there is a very important stipulation which states that the duty, the obligation of Yad Vashem, the institute which was to come into existence, is to honor the righteous among the nations who risked their lives to save Jews. And this project went underway in 1962, immediately after the Eichmann trial was over. In 1962, a committee was established, and that committee has been in existence since then, and the committee examines cases of rescue, principally by individual non-Jews. We're talking of Europe, so we're talking of Christians, who risked their lives for reasons unbeknownst to us and perhaps to themselves, to save Jews from certain death. The criteria are very simple. Any person who so much as saved one other human being, a Jewish person in this case, for as little as one day or for as long as years, months or years, and did that not for any for any tangible benefits which he exacted as a condition of his help.
You need to make money.
To make money, and not in order to pressure the person whom he was helping to convert or to convert or to become a member of the ethnic majority.
Simply a Samaritan act.
A Samaritan act, a humanitarian act, and this can be verified by testimony by adult persons who were at that time old enough to understand. And if this satisfies the knowledge that we have of that period, that person is hereby recognized as being a righteous among the nations, and it is entitled to have a tree bearing his name in the Garden of the Righteous at Yad Vashem to immortalize his deeds for eternity.
Now, the Garden of the Righteous and the Avenue of the Righteous leads up to the entrance of Yad Vashem. It's all around it, and it's the first contact you have with the memorial is the righteous Gentiles.
Right, precisely. When you enter Yad Vashem, what you see are the trees and the names. And so you are greeted at Yad Vashem with the testimonies of life, of saving of human beings. And then, of course, as you proceed inside, you become aware of the horrors and this full story of the Holocaust as it is documented in the museums.
Well, we have one person who was saving and one person who was saved here with us. Let me turn to to Ms. Derman first. When you were in Europe during World War II, not that you had a choice, but how did you know that you could depend on people to help you, and how did you find people to help you?
You really did not know until you came and you knocked on the door. In my experience, I had 3 righteous Christians that saved me that particular day when I was really sanctioned to die. 2 of them, I don't even know their names. However, I want to leave their names, not their names, but their deeds for future generations.
How long did they help you?
In both cases, in the first case, when my sister and I were running from massacres, from a grave where 10,000 Jews in Slonim were killed on November 14th, we were turned out by one Christian woman, and as we were running, and my sister already by this time was wounded, and we came to a door of a saintly Christian woman that, while standing in the window and watching us running to hide in a barn, opened her door and said these words, "God brought you to the right house, I will save you." My sister, she attended to my sister's wound, opened up a sleeping sofa, took out the inside, put us in, left enough air, and kept us there the day of the massacre. That was my first encounter with a righteous Christian. We left this house after the day of the massacre. We changed clothes with peasant women. We walked distances, not knocking on anybody's door, staying in the woods. It was winter and cold. And we finally came to another Christian woman that my parents knew. And she too took us in, kept us in hiding for several days, very cleverly disguising that we were not Jewish, but some maids that she took in, taught us how to weave and taught us how to spin the wool to make yarn, and kept us there for a length of time. Sent a man back to Slonim to find out if there are still Jews left in the ghetto. And as he returned and told us that there were still Jews, my sister and I made the journey back. I do not know the woman's name, but she was saintly, she was good. She really brought out the best in human behavior. My third encounter with a righteous Mordechai Pardiel knows. We honored him at Yad Vashem, a man of 19, Tadeusz Soroka, when we were running from the ghetto Grodno to Vilno. He saved 9 Jews, 3 different trips, by taking Jews from Grodno to Vilno on top of German trains, military trains that were going from Grodno to Vilno. The first group arrived there safely. The second group arrived safely, which was my father and my little brother. And then it was our turn to go. Aaron and I, my husband now, Aaron Derman, and Ruby Lauren, the 3 of us went on top of trains. He went with us. He told us which train to take. He stood with us. He told us how to do it. I end up hanging, not being able to go up to the top of the train, the roof of the boxcar. He risked his life running from the head of the locomotive all the way, looking for me. And when he came to the boxcar that I was hanging from, they made a human chain. He brought Aaron and Ruby to the very same car. They held his at his ankles so he would not slip down, and he pulled me up. And he traveled with us to Vilno all the time, telling us when to go get off, and walked in with us practically to the ghetto. We joined a group of Jews going back to work.
How long did he stay with you? Is that the last you saw of him until?
The last I saw of him, he stayed with us one night. He disappeared when Poland, when Grodno was liberated. He left Grodno and he went to Poland because Grodno is the Soviet Union now. We searched for the men for 40 years, and we found him. A very beautiful human being, very simple, doesn't consider himself a hero, as Mordechai knows because he spoke to him. He said that he just did the thing to do at this time. He was brought up as a Catholic in a believed.
Where did you find him?
I found him in Poland. It was a search for many, many years that we searched for him, and I finally located him.
Dr. Blindstrup, you've been sitting very patiently listening, and having been on the other end of this, having been the one who helped, when this happened to you, or when you found yourself in this situation, was it something that you were calculating doing, or was it a spontaneous act?
No, it was very spontaneous. I was young, and I was stranded in Rotterdam. I was staying with my sister, and I couldn't go back to my hometown. And we all were very anti-German to begin with, and my sister had a Jewish friend, and one day this Jewish friend and her cousin came to my sister's house and said, with a little suitcase, and I was there, my sister was not, and they said, we have to go, we have gotten the announcement that we have to be at the railroad train station. So I said, well, come on in, and I gave them a room, and when my sister came home, she was terrified. She was extremely frightened of the Germans, of the Nazis, and they stayed 2 or 3 days, and my sister said, well, I have to leave because I can't be here. Well, in the meantime, somebody knew somebody else who was in the underground, and I contacted them, and they found a place for them to go, to hide. And the contacts were always without names. You had a pseudo name. They gave you a name. And so I took them over, these 2 women, to a place, and where they were taken then to a hiding place. And I kept in contact with them. I was the go-between, because they were taken to a place where they had to pay for their boarded room. And I was the go-between to get money to give to somebody. And then one day, and it was not long before the end of the war, we got a message that somebody had betrayed them, and they were all killed. And that was a very, but from then on, I was asked by the underground to take Jewish people to hiding places, and which I did. And once I was on the train with some Jewish people who had false documents, and I was arrested by the SS, and I was in jail for a couple of days, and then I was released because I was very brazen and I talked my way out of it.
Very brazen. If you look back on that now and call it very brazen at the time, did you think you would be getting out?
I was pretty sure that I would get out.
You seem to have been very sure of yourself at the time. After the first spontaneous action, you became very much part and parcel to an overt
very much
act. Did you live daily with this kind of threat above your head, or did you feel, I'm impervious to this? I mean, did you have that kind of adrenaline pumping all that time? I
had adrenaline pumping. I couldn't tell my sister what I was doing, so she didn't know. I always had to make excuses.
You were a teenager at the time.
I was 17.
And what about your parents?
My parents were in another part of Holland, and that was a part I couldn't get to.
You were still stranded there. You could never get back there.
I couldn't get back at that time.
And they did not know what you were doing.
Oh, they didn't know at all.
Dr. Paldiel, is this typical? I mean, is there any profile of someone who acts this way, the righteous Gentile?
May I add simply to what Nini was referring, what her own experience is. The record for the Netherlands is that some 22,000 Jews went into hiding. About 6,000 of them were betrayed. The rest, that 16,000, made it through the war. In each case of betrayal, of course, both the rescuers and the rescued persons suffered in incarceration in concentration camp. May I also point out in Eastern Europe, anyone apprehended helping a Jew in whatever way, not even giving refuge, even providing food or transportation, was liable to the death penalty, sometimes on the very spot.
Mm-hmm. And you knew this, I mean, and it didn't stop you.
It was the Germans publicized that. In Eastern Europe, there were, this was on public bulletin board, public posters in the major cities. In Western Europe, it was in the media. Helping a Jew, frustrating Nazi designs on the Jew was a major crime. Everyone was aware of it. Anyone who as much got himself involved in this business knew that he was placing his safety, his very life on the line.
So by definition, it would seem that these people who did this had a mission. And yet, when you study who these people were, going back to my original question, is there any kind of profile you can draw?
Well, that's a very interesting question. That's the most fascinating question of this whole project. And these people do not consider themselves, in fact, they resent when they are idolized and presented as heroes. It seems that these people made a decision, as Nina pointed out, which was when faced with the situation, they either took the decision or they did not, or they procrastinated. But the decision to help was not, I wouldn't call it a very rational decision. It was more, and I wouldn't call it an irrational decision, but it came from perhaps the most profoundest level of human nature, of human behavior, the humanistic attribute.
Because we read about people who not just weren't friendly to Jews, but didn't know any Jews before this happened. In fact, many didn't like Jews when this happened, and yet they drew a line between not liking and annihilation.
Because they came to the point, they realized that facing them was not only a Jew, but they could see beyond the Jew and see the human being. And that human being, his life was threatened unjustly. Whatever your own prejudices and thinking at that moment, if you could identify with that human being across you, and if you could see that this life was threatened unjustly, and therefore I'm threatened as well, and therefore I can't I can't stand by and allow this to happen, you could get involved.
Dr. Blindstrup, Nini Blindstrup, you've been sitting here nodding and saying, yeah, I mean, does this mirror your feelings from back then?
Yeah, very much so. There was another, at the end of the hunger winter, because Rotterdam, the west part of Holland, went through the hunger winter in 44 to 45. And that was really, there was no food and people were dying in the streets. And through the underground, I got a message that the Red Cross was secretly getting a barge with a lot of, to take mostly Jewish children, but children who were starving. And the majority were Jewish who had been in hiding, and taking them to the northern part of Groningen to save them. And they needed some leaders, some people to take care of the children. So they asked me if I wanted to go, and I certainly wanted to do that and did it. And I asked my sister to come with us, and she didn't know that these were Jewish children. She didn't know that it was not above board, you know, and we took our bicycles on the boat, and we were for 9 days and 9 nights in the straw while we were taking care of these children. And we were shot at from the air, and we arrived in Groningen, and there these children were received by a committee, and they were distributed. And we went on our bicycles all the way from the northern part of Holland to the south. In between, one of my sisters, who lived in another part of the country, she was pregnant and was expecting her third child. And they were evacuated by the Germans on cattle trains to the northern part of Holland, and we found her. And we were there when the baby was born. And so then we went on our bicycles, and we were freed a couple of times, and a couple of times we were in the occupied, and we had to go into the ditches and so on, but we made it.
What When you came across the people you were with, you talked about 3 people in particular, but I'm sure you've heard other stories. What do you make of these people? I mean, we talked about having no real profile of them. They come from all walks of life. What in your travels back then, looking back some 40-something years, was it something, well, I've got to trust whoever's there, or did you know who would help you and who would not?
No, one really did not know whom you would find in your rescue. Most of these people is really a conglomeration. They come from all walks of life. People that did it spontaneously. They did not think, what do I do? Somehow within them, something made them do it. Something made them do it. They did it, and once they became involved, they sort of, in my own experience, it was only one night and one day. No, with one Christian woman, actually, we stayed a length of time. But others that have been weeks and weeks and years in hiding, they became part and parcel of the family. They received love. They really became part. It was a joint venture that came from the deepest inner sources of the human being. You cannot be trained for it. You cannot take courses in it. When the occasion arises, some of them, the fiber is so that it shows through and it comes through.
When you look back on this now, we heard Dr. Paldiel say a lot of people in your position resent being labeled heroes. Well, how do you feel?
I don't feel like a hero. I feel that there was something I did, and I would do it again, I hope. And it was not necessarily because people were Jewish. It was because they were people. They were human, and
Absolutely.
I would have done it for anybody.
That's what I would agree with this wholeheartedly. I think the difference between those people, as they conceive, as they see themselves, and the rest of the tens of millions of Europeans living on our occupation, were not necessarily that the others were evil or had evil intention, but the others had been cowed into submission because they were overcome by fear, by this terrible and awesome Nazi machine. When a person is overcome with fear, as we know, when we're sitting in a plane which is suddenly hijacked and we all want to get out alive, you yield and you surrender part of your humanity. You want, the animal instinct takes over, you want to survive. Those righteous, and we're talking about a very small minority, they were able somehow to overcome their fear, or control their fear. They had the experience of fear, but they were able to control it, not allow this to affect their humanity. They found a way to assert their humanity, and therefore they claimed they were simply normal people.
Well, let me ask
They
you.
couldn't. They would not allow
No.
themselves at this particular time to be cowed into a situation of fear and surrender because of that awesome and terrible, inhuman Nazi terror machine.
Now you have enshrined about 7,500 of these people in the Avenue of the Righteous. Nini Blindstrup, you're not there.
No.
And you wonder
and I
why.
won't-
I mean,
and I
what,
won't
what
be.
criteria, why won't you be? You said, I just heard that under your breath, well, I won't be. Not to try to do any lobbying
Don't
on this
be too sure
program,
she
right?
won't be.
But well, I mean, how do you determine? You talk about documentation.
A person has to be nominated. Usually,
I nominate.
in most cases, like in the case of Lisa Derman, she nominates the person who rescued her. She nominates, in other words, she writes to us. We then instruct her how to submit her evidence based on certain guidelines. She submitted evidence, her husband, Aaron Derman, at that time they were not married, and other members of her family, Bob Ness and so forth, submitted in their turn their evidence of how they met this person, the circumstances of the rescue and so forth. Occasionally we may ask the other side to verify the story or to submit their own version of the story. And then this goes when we are satisfied that the relevant evidence, in other relevant to the rescue story itself, is complete as far as possible, and the evidence has been given in good faith by the survivors, who at that time were old enough to understand. They were not 3-year-old children, and it's not from hearsay. This goes to a committee And the committee then decides whether to recognize.
But it's
so
not,
the process is very simple.
Very simple, and it's not a political one. I mean, you just have to have very, very basic facts ascertained, and
that's right.
And you're in. Well, how do people react to this? Of course, many of them are not living when they are enshrined, but those who are, do they look upon this as, well, it's something, it's a thing rather than this total experience that I was involved in? Not to say that it would be, I want to be very careful with the words here, but it's an election as opposed to something that was bigger than life that went through. I mean, if you were to be nominated, would you feel it was an honor or was something that would be, let me ask.
I have from the very beginning, when the Avenue of the Righteous was opened in Evanston, I really didn't want to be honored. I have very strong feelings. I want to be anonymous. It was not that big a thing.
Well, let me ask you, do you have that problem with people who don't want to?
We have that situation. I would say that the overwhelming majority of persons who are nominated or who are honored are very modest and prefer not to be honored.
How do you deal with that? Because what you are really doing is, it's more than just honoring a person. You're keeping
well,
the spirit
when we
alive.
come up against, when we stonewalled and the person says, I don't want to be honored, we try to we try to convince them to allow us to acknowledge and to be grateful to him, first of all to him, and if he doesn't need that honor, at least for future generations to know that here there was this man in the Netherlands, in Poland, in Germany, even German in uniforms who helped Jews, persons from different walks of life, even a thief, even a girl from the streets. We have all kinds of people who found at that particular moment. We want future generations to know that it is possible to come to the aid of another person who is in distress, and you need not have a halo over your head. You need not be a saint. You can be anyone from different walks of life, and if you can simply put the luggage of prejudices and other socially programmed opinions in the closet momentarily to help a human life, it can be done. And the proof is it was done. And will you please allow us to use your example for future generations, for the benefit of mankind.
You mentioned that there is also an Avenue of the Righteous that has been dedicated here in Evanston, Illinois recently. But if you would like some more information about the Righteous or know of someone who might qualify to be enshrined in the Avenue of the Righteous in Yad Vashem, let me give you a number and an address. The number here in Chicago is 677-4640, or you can write to the Holocaust Memorial Foundation, and the address, you see it there, 4255 Main Street, Skokie, 60076. Again, the phone number, 677-4640, the Holocaust Memorial Foundation, 4255 Main Street in Skokie. Again, our thanks to all our guests, Dr. Nini Blindstrup, Dr. Paul Diel, and of course, Lisa Derman for being with us to discuss Yad Vashem, the Avenue of the Righteous, and just what it was that made people do the kind of things that they did. And for those who respected lives and saved Jews, a tree is planted and plaques are there in Yad Vashem in memory of the effort they made. We'd like to show you that now. I'm Mike Leiderman. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next time, and shalom.